right, so welcome to our webinar on getting ready for tournament. My name is Kate Donnellan, and I am the Destination Imagination Colorado Executive Director. Tina, why don't you introduce yourself?
And my name is Tina Morgenthaler, and I am part of the Destination Imagination training team. And I have been involved with DI for 14 years, most of those years as a team manager.
She is just recently not a team manager, so she's going to have a lot of insight for you guys. So if you have any questions during this presentation or any questions at all, it might not even have to do with getting ready for tournament, Tina and I can really help you. So put your question in the question box that's in your toolbar for Zoom meeting, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as we continue forward. So the first thing I think both Tina and I have to say is the tournament is your celebration. It's the fun experience. We want you and your team to have a great time. That right, Tina?
Absolutely, absolutely. The kids deserve this. You deserve this. This is a chance to celebrate everything that's been accomplished so far. And yes, there's some stress associated with the day, no doubt about it, but it can be just a great deal of fun.
So the first thing you want to do, this is prior to when you go to tournament, is to prepare your students for a really fun day. Whether you're at a, whatever tournament you're at, big, small, rural, urban, your regional directors are working hard to provide a really fun experience for you, because this is the last part of the creative journey, which is celebration of your work. So remind your team how far they've come. Remind them how much they've learned, especially if they are feeling unconfident about where they are, and tell them how proud you are of them, because you as the adult in the group can go back and remember how much they struggled, even maybe to pick a team challenge.
And I think this is a really important element. This experience has so much to offer to kids, and it is a lot of hard work. It's hard work for them, a lot of stress for you, and you really all deserve to celebrate. You, more than anybody, are in a position to recognize the growth that every single one of your team members has experienced, how they've grown as a team. It's the journey that's most important, and it's the journey that most kids are going to remember 10 years after their DI experience. So, really think about that and take the time to tell them the growth that you've seen in them. The one other thing I want to, before we go on to talking about tournament day, prior to tournament day, I think it's important as a team manager for you to reflect on how you want that day to run. This is your chance to kind of set your ground rules. Most likely you've been meeting with your team and it's been just you and maybe one other adult, and now you're going to have a whole bunch of other adults that come into the circle of what's been happening. So think about how you want that day to run. Do you want to provide transportation for your whole team? What time do you want your team to meet you? And what do you want to happen that day? Do you want your team to stay together as a team? Or is there a point in time when it's okay for the kids to leave with their families? Are they coming back? I had one day when I hadn't set a really solid rule, and I had some parents that wanted to take their kids away between our central challenge and our instant challenge. And it was really stressful, not only for me, but also for the other team members. So prior to tournament, think about how you want that day to run, figure out the ground rules, and make sure that you communicate those not only to your team members, and almost most importantly, to the parents who are going to be part of that day with you.
This isn't a day, this is a day for your team. This is your team day. So when you're making, I'm glad you said that, Tina, because I don't think I put that in the slides about making a schedule for the day. But in about a week or so, or 2 weeks to 1 week before your tournament, you're going to get a schedule of when you're performing your team challenge and when you're performing your instant challenge. You may have your instant challenge first, you may have your central challenge first. So whatever's first, you want to arrive to school at least 1 hour early. You need to unload the props, and parents can help, and then you go park and have the kids and the parents move the props. But remember, no matter what happens to those props, those parents cannot fix or alter them. So they can move them from point A to point B, and if something breaks in transit, the team has to be the one to fix it. So make sure you arrive at least an hour earlier. Depending on how nervous your team gets, you may be even 90 minutes. Anything, Tina?
I agree that to me 1 hour would have been, it was just too little time for my team. My team was more of a 90-minute, wanted to be there, get their space and set up. So kind of gauge that on your team's comfort level, their anxiety level, and what it's going to take for them to reach that comfort point.
Yeah, and how much assembly and disassembly you need. You know, to fit all the props in your car, it may be a matter of just putting in a few boxes, and other teams may be they might have to take things apart and to put them in a car and then reapply and then maybe rehammer them together or whatever. So just make sure you arrive in plenty of time. So when you arrive at a tournament, there's lots to look at. So look at other teams' props, but we'll talk about not getting scared by them in a minute. Look at what they've done. Have they used any interesting materials? And just don't be nervous, because you don't know what their challenge is or what their age level is or what their scored elements are. So don't look at your team's props and somebody else's team's props and say, oh my God, we're going to lose, because that's not everything. But take that as a learning opportunity to point out to the kids, oh wow, did you see that they used foam core, or I don't know, orange spoons?
I would encourage you don't look at just your challenge, but walk around and look at other challenges. Look for older teams, more experienced teams, and this gives your kids a chance to see what is possible. And yes, right now they're kind of locked into where they are for this tournament day, but if they go on, they have the opportunity to make changes and just start dreaming about next year.
There's a lot that's going to happen during that day, and if I don't have it as a screenshot, then Tina and I will sort of walk you through the day. But you're going to go, for instance, you're going to arrive 60 minutes to 90 minutes ahead of time. Let's say your central challenge is first. You're going to get ready for your central challenge. You're going to perform your central challenge, and then you might have 2 hours to wait until your instant challenge time. So during that time, you're going to want to support your school. If you have other teams that are going from your school, go and cheer for them. They would love to see you. You can also watch other teams' performances. You can watch teams in your own challenge at a different age level, or other people's challenges.
And I think that this is something that helps you build relationships within the DI community, which is a really positive thing, not just for your kids, but also for you, because nobody understands as well as another team manager what you're going through, and building those relationships is something that would really benefit you.
Great. So you're getting ready for your tournament, and if you are in one of the bigger tournaments, or even some of the mid-size or smaller tournaments, you're going to want to plan your entire day. So what you should pack in your bag, and this is not interference for you to have this, is food. Snacks and lunch, depending on when your time frame is. And I would not just bring sugary snacks. So my kiddo, who's now 22, when he was 7, he went to his first DI experience, and he had never had caffeine in a Mountain Dew before. And he was given a Mountain Dew by another parent and literally crashed and couldn't function. So, you know, don't load kids up on sugar and caffeine. This isn't a beauty pageant or anything. Nice, healthy snacks that they're accustomed to eating to keep them full. You want to pack a first aid kit of Band-Aids, Tylenol, Advil, children's doses or adult doses depending on your kids, and make sure the parents know you have that, and bring plenty of water. Each kid should have a huge water bottle. For some reason, schools just dehydrate you like nobody's business, and that can bring on headaches as well, and you want your kids to feel well. You want to bring a repair kit. So the repair kit would be if you need duct tape or a screwdriver or a hammer. You know the props that your kiddos have, and you know what always breaks. So make sure that repair kit is completely filled up with those items. You're going to want to bring your paperwork, which I'll talk about more next. You want to make sure you have a checklist for your kids. And this is something you should do prior to tournament, is get a checklist. Oh, we need to hook up the gearbox. We need to make sure the weights are available. We need to make sure that Jody has her makeup on. Whatever the steps are you need to get ready to start your performance, if you have a checklist that the kids have practiced with, it will help them remember everything they need to help, and it will keep you from interfering. And then I used to always put in my big bag some IC supplies. So if we had any downtime, I would just have them play with paper or straws. Thoughts?
I would recommend that you ask a parent to be in charge of the snacks, lunch, and water bottles, because you have a lot of details to take care of that day. So find a parent or two parents that you trust that can take that part over for you. One of the things that I would definitely put in your repair kit is an extension cord. Because you don't know exactly where you're going to be set up in the school, and usually the outlets are few and far between. So besides the items that like a hot glue gun or a drill or the duct tape that you might have in your repair kit, that's always a good idea, is an extension cord. I'm sorry, my puppy is barking at the door. Is that
your puppy is just really excited about tournament?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think anybody else is home. I can't decide if it'll make it worse.
So do talk to your parents as much. You know, I would have a first aid parent, and as Tina said, a food parent. So, and then also, as I said, make your kids help you prepare all these things. Oops. Right. Okay. Oh, great. So when I asked you to bring paperwork, I wanted to show you where you get it. So all of this paperwork is either in the rules of the road or your challenge. But I'm going to show you something else. Share. You go to destinationimagination.org and you log in. You all should have logged into the resource. Oh my gosh, the site's down. I forgot. If you go to the documents section of the resource page, you will be able to find fillable PDFs of all your tournament data forms. And I really wish I could show it to you, but their site is having some issues right now. I forgot about that. But on that site, so that's destinationimagination.org, log in and go to documents. And if you pull up your challenge, there's fillable PDFs, and you need at least 5 or 6 copies of your challenge paperwork. That is what's called a tournament data form. You need a copy of your expense report with receipts, and you need 2 copies of your Declaration of Independence. One is for your central challenge and one is for your instant challenge. All team members need to be listed on your Declaration of Independence, even if you've had someone leave the team, and the team members and managers must sign. You also need to have a team sign. This is a non-scored element, and teams love to spend time on their sign, even though it's worth 0 points, but they love spending time on it. And the team sign, the only purpose is if you are from Conifer High School and there's 4 teams from Conifer High School, you want to make sure your team name, your team number is clearly present on the sign so appraisers can match their paperwork to your sign so they know they're scoring the correct team.
I had 2 things to add. One is you should have your own copy of each of these items that you keep safe, separate in your bag, in case something happens and paperwork gets misplaced. Plus, if you move on from your regional tournament, you're going to want to have your own copy. In theory, some of these should come back to you, but if you give away the only copy you have of your expense report, then it's something that's going to have to be duplicated. And then one additional item that you should have with you is if you asked for any team clarifications, you should have a copy of that team clarification, that the response you got from DI.
Sorry. That's terrific. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. My family is making dinner right all around me. So the webinars are great because we can sit here being casual in our homes, but it also can be a little distracting. So make sure that your team has all the forms ready at check-in. I want to talk about the tournament data forms. The tournament data forms are really important for the appraisers to know what they're actually appraising. So if it says, please describe your team choice element number 1, and that is maybe Joanna's costume, you want to make sure that you are very clear of who Joanna is, what her costume looks like. You want to be clear and concise and precise. And that's why it's really great to download the fillable PDFs on the website because they are really neat. You can fill out those if the kids dictate it to you. Honestly, the appraisers have a very little time to read the paperwork, so you want to make sure you point them in the right direction of where to watch, and if anything is illegible, that makes it just a little bit trickier for them. It says here that middle and secondary teams must fill out their own forms. It is not interference to help them out. So it is interference to tell them what to write, but it is not interference to make sure it's legible. And the team should read their own forms. Go ahead, Tina.
The website that you were trying to show that showed the documents, you actually can type on that form, not only as a team manager, but also as someone who has appraised. It's a fabulous idea because it eliminates that, it makes it more clear and precise, and rather than the scribble where the appraiser spends their time, their very valuable time, trying to figure out what your team has said, the typing just makes it so much easier.
Right. And I'll probably stick those on our form as well and let you guys know. I'll probably do that. I don't know what's wrong with their site today. So appraisers will have about 2 minutes to read your forms, so that's why it's important. And they do not really have time, let alone you know, to thoroughly read attachments. And why I'm telling you this is one of my teams, when they were quite young, wrote their whole script in iambic pentameter, and we thought it was very clever. And I think the essence of the rhyming scheme the appraisers knew, but we wanted them to read the whole script, and that was before I knew better. And really, they're not going to. You can always submit extra things like your coding for how you coded a website or coded a vehicle, but they might know that they might not always have the time to really read or understand it. And as Tina said, extra copies, always extra copies. Tina, why don't you talk about appraisers and what they're looking for when you're on tournament data forms?
So your tournament data form is part of the challenge. So your team should be familiar with that, and they should have answers for each of those items. The appraisers are going to appraise exactly what is on the form and what the form tells them to appraise. So your kids really need to spend some time thinking about that and being very specific so that the appraisers can give them every point possible. As it says here, be concise and specific. The appraisers won't know your team member's name, so rather than saying our team choice element is Susie's costume, say something like, we want our team choice element is the Bluebird costume that you will see at this point in our presentation. Here it says for side trips.
This is an old slide.
Those are now called team choice elements. So
that's embarrassing.
Team choice elements. It helps for appraisers to know which team, know when the team choice element happens and not have to score two items that are happening simultaneously. One thing that does happen, not just with new teams, but also experienced teams, is sometimes the kids are so excited about a piece of something that they end up doing what's called double dipping. They want it to score as, they want a team choice element scored in one way, but it really is part of the central challenge. So when your team shows up at tournament, there's going to be a check-in appraiser that's going to go through their paperwork with them and look at what they're about to present. And so it is possible that appraiser will tell them that they are double dipping. So that's why we have this note here that your team should choose a backup team choice element in case the one that they are showing to the prep appraisers is not really eligible. It's nice that the kids have kind of that thought in their head so that they're not caught off guard. Double and triple check your paperwork to make certain all questions have been answered properly. And the easier you make it for the appraisers, the more they will see in your performance. And, you know, we have just fabulous volunteers that work in this organization, and they want this to be a really, really positive experience for your kids. They're not there to trip them up. They really are there to give them every point possible and to celebrate all of their hard work.
Okay, so when you're getting ready for your central challenge, you're going to check in to the site 20 minutes prior to the performance. So remember, so I asked you to be at your tournament site an hour before, so really an hour before this 20-minute time. You're going to go and you're going to greet a prep area appraiser. The prep area appraiser is going to greet you and they're going to speak to your team. And the best thing that you can do for your team is to step back. You can definitely listen. You can definitely, especially if you have a younger team, make sure you are being aware of what's going on. But the prep area appraisers really want to talk and interact with your team because they have done all the work and they know what they're doing. As a former team manager, as I can just remember my first time, this is so stressful to let your team handle it. But I promise you, you can let them have this time with the appraiser. The prep area appraiser is trained to sort of relax them. They're going through a checklist that basically talks about, hey, do you have shoes on? Going through some safety rules, making sure that they know what their team choice element is. Making sure in specific challenges that specific requirements are being met, etc. Once your prep area is finished with your team, know that you have a full 20 minutes with the prep area appraiser, and it rarely takes 20 minutes. So your prep area appraiser might joke around with you. You may have you know, sometimes to maybe do a, calm down any kid that you're seeing is anxious. You know, you have all that time. When you are ready to move into the launch area, the parents are allowed to move props into the launch area, but then they need to go sit down. And And during prep, you don't want parents. If the parents don't need to be there, have them in the audience, because they are more than likely to get more anxious and make their kids more anxious than you. The team will be asked if they allow video and or photography with flash, and the kids can say no. So if your kids say you can't take pictures and you can't do a video, you've got to live with that. So make sure you talk to the kiddos about that they are going to be expected to answer those questions. And then the team, so at that moment, the team will be shown certain aspects of the challenge site. For example, where the extension cord is, where the weight placement area is, where the flip for the improv will be placed, etc. So your team will be given an orientation a little bit to the site. And then your team will be introduced, and this is sort of a procedure that takes place. That's sort of a ritual in DI. The timekeeper announcer will talk about, turn off your cell phones, etc. And then they're going to ask the audience if they're ready, and the audience will let out a huge cheer. And then they're going to ask, team, are you ready? And some teams just say yes, and some teams will do a little chant or cheer. And then the timekeeper announcer will ask the appraisers if they're ready, and the appraisers generally have a cute little thing that they say, and then you're going to be told to begin. Did I miss anything there, Tina?
I don't think so. One thing Kate mentioned, that sometimes having that you really don't want the parents in the prep area, because this is a really, as you guys know, a kid-driven day. They're there to highlight what they've done. So one thing that helps is a lot of parents would like to see what the other teams look like. And so that other team is going to be getting ready to perform just as your kids are moving into the prep area. So I would generally encourage my parents to, go grab a seat so you can see what the other team did. And that gives them something to do to help alleviate their nerves, and gives your team a chance to regroup as a team and support each other.
Great. So we have a question from Caroline, who asks, if a team has built something for their central challenge and they can't get it to work by tournament, but they put in a lot of effort into the attempt, is there a way it can still be incorporated and scored? Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
Well, Kate, I'd like to hear what you have to say. I guess I have thoughts.
So everything that is a part of your performance is scored in some respect, in that even if it's just overall effect. So that's one thing. If it is a team choice element, and you want to show that workmanship, 100% bring it on board. If it is a required element for like their technical element and it doesn't work, you can bring it on anyway and explain to the appraisers how it should have worked, and they will take that into consideration when they score. Was that how you were going to answer it?
It is, because yes, and you don't distract from the other pieces. But if it's a part that is going to be a scored element, there's technical design and technical innovation. So they could still get points for technical innovation because they had this really cool idea and they attempted to do it, but they might get a lesser score for the technical design because it didn't actually do what it was supposed to do. So they should bring it unless it's going to distract from the rest of the performance.
I would agree. Okay. Oops, go back here. Oh, okay. So, again, there's this whole ritual of, is the audience ready? Is the team ready? Are the appraisers ready? And then the timekeeper announcer is going to say, you may begin. And that is the moment the 8 minutes or whatever time you have begins. The team at that moment brings all of their props, backdrops, whatever they have, their structure into the performance area, and they must set up and perform within the allowed performance time. Your team, once your team begins, appraisers are going to move. If they can't hear you, if they need to be closer, this particularly happens in large gymnasiums, you may find that an appraiser gets up, moves, and sits right next to your student. The reason why they're doing it is because you said on your team choice element that this guy was going to do jokes for his team choice element, and so they want to hear or they want to see the mechanism. So you should prepare your students that the appraisers are going to move and they may sit close to them, and they should not let them throw that off. After your team performs and everyone claps and your team takes a bow, then your team is going to be interviewed by the appraisers. The best thing I think you can do to prepare for this is to have the person that did the technical element stand by the technical element. The person that did the team choice elements stand by the team choice elements. Because not every appraiser wants to know everything. So you want to make sure the right kiddo is asking. And you can practice this by asking your team, or having one, more importantly, you should have one of your team members ask the team, how did this work? How did you come up with this idea? How did you make this costume? Those are the type of questions that the appraisers are going to ask. When the appraisers say that they are done, the team parents can then help clean up the performance area. If you have had a chemical reaction with water, if you have sprayed glitter, if you have done confetti, you better have in your kit a broom and a mop, and you need to make the performance site as spick and span as when you first arrived. But your team parents get to do that while your team moves all their props off the stage.
I wanted to go back to number 7 about the appraisers talking to your team. Prepare your team for this, and as Kate said, it's great if they ask each other questions. Have them reflect on the journey that they've taken through this DI season. Think about the hours that they've spent creating different items, theories that they tried, things that didn't work. Those are the sorts of things that appraisers really like to hear. And it's not uncommon for an appraiser to approach a group. And as Kate suggested, you might have your team think about, oh, I'm the one that should talk about this technical element because I know the most about it, and break it up. But it's not uncommon for appraisers to walk up and say, who can talk to me about this? So have your team think about that and have them practice. As I said before, the appraisers really want to support the kids, but it can be really intimidating to the kids to have those adults up there talking to them if they're not ready. And the other thing is to make sure that your team parents, and not just your team parents, but anybody else who's shown up to watch the performance, understands that they should remain in their seat until the appraisers are done. Because I've had that happen where, suddenly there's this group of adults that's up there talking to the kids, so other people think that they can. And really, in order for the kids to get every point that they possibly can, they need that time with the appraisers without other people jumping into the conversation.
And then all the team parents and your spectators should help clear in order for the tournament to remain on time, which we're actually very good at. You need to help clear and clean the performance area. And when I say clean, really, it's only if something has been spilled or left behind. It's not that you have to sweep up after you if you haven't dropped anything. It's just for those of you that are popping balloons with glitter in them or doing a chemical reaction. Yeah. Oops. No. Okay, so this is sort of a diagram of what a typical site looks like. This one is a little bit more complicated than it may or may not be, but it's about what it is. So if you can see number 1 right here, the team is going to enter from the prep area. And this is where they're going to talk about, can you do photography and all that? They're going to come to the launch line. At the launch line, the timekeeper announcer is going to show them where the information is, where the plug is, where they're going to put anything that they need to put. And then the team can walk out here when they're told to go. There are generally chairs here for the appraisers, and there's always a chair that's marked team manager. And so there's usually 2 special chairs that you get to sit in so you get the best view. And then, as I said, the appraisers are going to walk around. You can see all these little appraisers. They're walking around to hear what they're going to hear. And then there's generally audience chairs. So that's what it looks like.
One question that people often have is regarding the launch line and the presentation area. And your team must remain behind the launch line until time starts. And generally the appraiser will say, your time starts now. Your team does not have to move everything out of the launch area into the performance area. If there's something they want to leave behind in the launch area, they can do that. Technically, there's nothing that says they can't perform in that launch area, but generally that's not what they're going to want to do. They're going to want to be in the presentation area so that they have the best opportunity for the appraisers to see what's going on.
If they leave something in the launch, behind the launch line, like a piece of scenery, that will still be scored. All right, so now we're going to go into IC, and as I said, sometimes you have instant challenge prior to team challenge or central challenge, and sometimes you have it reverse, and it really depends on the nature of the tournament, how much time they have, and how big the sites are. If you make it to the state tournament, I will tell you it can be either. So again, you want to check in 20 minutes prior to your IC. When you go and check in, they're going to give you what's called the instant challenge oath. When your kids are going to turn in their Declaration of Independence, and then they're going to take an oath that says they are not going to tell the challenge to anybody that went into that wasn't a part of their team. They can talk to their team manager, and they can talk to their co-team manager, but the kids in this time will get to choose if one or none of your team managers can come in. So I always wanted to come in, so I would say to my kids, it's your choice, but I won't be able to give you feedback if you don't let me in. So I sort of did that, and they almost always left me in, except one time they let my husband in, and I was dying waiting. But some teams don't ever let anybody in. So that's the kids' choice. Then they're going to have to wait till their team is called. At the state tournament, we have a big warm-up room where we have balloons and drawing and fun activities. In most smaller regional tournaments, the kiddos just sort of wait in the hallway, and this is a good time to huddle up and remind them about their instant challenge procedure. Who's the builder? Who's the timekeeper? Who's the reader? Etc.
I would also add, so I would do that with my team. I would say, what do we know about instant challenge, and have them run through some of their basic rules and their roles. But then I would also have a fun brain activity for them to do. Gum was a pretty common thing, or mints, something that we talked about. Oh, this is really going to warm up your brain. And then some kind of like an ABC game where I'm going on a trip and I'm taking with me an apple, and the next person, I'm going on a trip and I'm taking an apple and a banana, and go around. Whatever it is, maybe you have something that you use as a warm-up for your meetings. Do that with the kids, because they can end up sitting there for a really long time, and nerves can really get the best of them.
Yeah, for sure. So what happens in the instant challenge room is, first of all, no timing devices can be brought in at all. No phones, no watches, no wristwatches, no iPads, no nothing. So that should all be left with a team parent prior to you going to instant challenge. And then this is your job, team managers. You're going to sit in the chair You're going to sit on your hands. You're going to look at your lap, and that's what you're going to do. You cannot give signals or hum or do anything. I mean, I think Tina's probably had this experience too. You as the team manager are so invested in your child's success. You know what goes right and what goes wrong with the instant challenge, and your heart is just going to be on the table with the team. And so just try to keep really calm and centered in yourself, because you may do something really inadvertent, like gasp or something like that, and you really can't do that. And I know, because I was a team manager, it's not that you're trying to interfere, it's that you have so much pent up emotion in your own body. But so I would just look at my lap and sit on my hands.
I think I learned how to hold my breath for 5 minutes attending ICs with my team. Sitting on my hands, holding my breath, trying not to make any motion whatsoever. So.
And then when you leave, thank the volunteers, shake their hands, or whatever you want to do. That they can't give you any feedback, but just saying thank you is always nice. And then you're going to have the opportunity to do what we call chill out. In some tournaments, you're going to have a chill out room. Some tournaments don't have the luxury of having to have rented that many rooms, so you can chill out in a quiet space with you and your team. And so this is the place where you guys review what happened in the challenge and talk about whatever you need to talk about. For the most part, this goes pretty smoothly. I have experienced as a team manager where this goes quite awry and kids start blaming each other. The thing as a team manager, if that happens, is to remind your team that they are a team, and success and not success is a team issue and never one person's issue. So but do take the time to do that. I always think like it's the guy that kicks the point after and then hits the goal post in football. Maybe if his team had gotten him closer, he would have made it, or if the blockers had done better. Like there's all kinds of things. It's always a team win or a team not win.
And I'd say try to stay positive and focus on the things that really did go right. Remind your team that every team that they're competing against in the tournament is going to face that same instant challenge. So you don't know what's going to happen. And then reinforce that they cannot talk about this instant challenge with anyone else once they leave the chill out room. It is cause for the team to be disqualified, and they're so excited, especially if it went really well or if it went horribly. And when they see their parents, that their instinct is to share them with them. So remind them, this is just between us. And if they need to talk about it some more, say, we'll all go out to the car, find a private place where you can sit and you won't be overheard. But
they can tell their parents, they can give their parents a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a medium. They can say, they can say that. They just can't say, oh my God, we tried to build a tower and at the last minute we added a piece and it failed. That they can't say, but they can say if they feel good about it. Okay, so DI tournaments can be very busy, and we hope that you've asked your teacher and your principal and your grandmothers and your aunts and your uncles to all come and watch your team perform. So make sure that your team supporters know your team's name, your team's school, the team's challenge, and the challenge time. There's not going to be a volunteer that's going to be able to tell Grandma Joanna that where her grandson is performing. We need to have a little bit more specific information to guide those supporters to where they need to be. Also be very aware that supporters may not view instant challenge performances. Yeah.
One thing that I always did is as soon as I knew what our schedule was for the day, I would immediately send an email to the parents, and I would include each of these things, you know, the team name, the team school, the team challenge, the challenge time, as well as the team number. Because if your team is just, you know, Conifer High School, and as Kate said before, there might be 3 teams that are Conifer High School, it becomes very difficult for anybody to help. But I would get that email out to the parents and then impress upon them that it's their responsibility and important for them to share all of that information with anyone they've invited to come and see the performance. And I would also encourage anyone who wants to see that performance to be there 30 minutes before the performance. Because as we talked about before, 20 minutes prior to the performance, your team is going to enter that prep area and check in. And you don't want grandma and the teachers and the principal all showing up and wanting to talk to your kids while they're in the prep area, busy with the appraiser trying to check in. So if you encourage them to arrive 30 minutes before, they can give a chance to give a hug, give a kiss, and go get their seat. And then your team can be focused on what it needs to be focused on.
Okay, so before I do this, one of the things I also did for my team is for my parents, is I would write a little check sheet. So if any of you guys are doing the scientific challenge this year, I would write a little paragraph, or not even a paragraph, a couple sentences that say what the challenge is. And then I would say one scored element is our symptomatic, which is a device, and then leave a blank. So and then I would have 2 columns, one that would say I saw my team do it, and then I saw the team before me do it, or have them be able to take notes so that they could, and it just gets them interactive with the process and knowing what to look for, because sometimes destination imagination performances are only understandable to you, the team manager, and the team, and sometimes spectators are unsure what they're looking at. So if you can guide them through the performance, you're going to see our story is about this, and our symptomatic is this, and our double vision is this. Then the parents know, oh, those are the requirements, and I should look for those in other teams as well. And I think it's helpful. Okay, so you're gonna get scored, and after your performance, about 30 minutes to an hour and a half, and again, it depends on the tournament and where you fall in the tournament order, you're gonna get your scores back. So you're going to get unscaled scores, and you're going to get, there's some items of your scoring that are going to be subjective, and you should be familiar with that. Like your team choice elements are fairly subjective. Probably the overall story of your medical mystery or your visit to a remote place, those are all subjective. And they are going to range on a score from 1 to 30. DI appraisers appraise not as A, B, C, D, and F, but they appraise as proficient, non-proficient, and above proficient. So if your team gets about 50% of the subjective scores, that's a really good job. So if they get 15 out of 30, that means that they've done it. They did what was asked of them in an age-appropriate manner. If they get 20 out of 15, that's just putting them up, that they did better than expected. And then, if you get a 25 to a 30, those are amazing, excellent scores. If you're getting a below a 15 and you move on to the next level of the tournament, that might be something that you can look at and maybe revise. So that's sort of how you look at scores. Objective points are, like in the on target, on the technical one or on the weight bearing one, how much weight did it hold? That's objective. There's only one answer to that. You can ask, you know, how many points did I get when my payload dropped off the airplane? Those are objective scores, which are, they're just a number. So you're going to get these scores, and you're going to get a sheet of paper called a sticky note page back, which has sticky notes on a piece of paper that the appraisers have written to talk to your team personally, and they're generally really fun, happy, positive comments about your team's performance. The scores that you've just received are called raw scores. So how it works in Destination Imagination is the scores are, once all the scores are put into the computer program, they get scaled to a perfect score. So if you, even if you got a 20 out of 30 and that was the best score out of the day, that becomes the highest score and it becomes a perfect score. So you're gonna see your raw scores when you're handed, when you talk to your appraiser after your performance, and then when you get your final results, you're gonna see scaled scores. Anybody bringing your scores to you should be able to really talk you through them once you look at them. But I don't want anybody to freak out if they've gotten a bunch of 15, 16, 17s on their piece of paper. And then finally, as a part of the Destination Imagination process, you can ask to review your scores if you think that there is a problem. And the first step of this process is to go to the person that gave you scores, and you can talk to them about whatever you saw. We really thought that our payload landed in this square, not that square, etc. And you can only change objective scores. But this is a time, if your students really feel like they were judged inappropriately, that they can actually talk to the tournament director about the issue. And again, the dialogue process is in the rules of the road. If you need to, you should talk to your regional director if that is something that happens. They don't happen very often, but it is a way if your team feels like they need to be heard about something, that they can do it. And frankly, it's fine. it's not as I said, we can't dialogue subjective scores, but we can dialogue objective scores or penalties.
From a sort of a procedural point of view, when you arrive at your tournament and you get to the room where you're going to be performing, usually there's a gigantic sheet of paper up on the wall, and it will list all the teams and the times that they're performing. And as Kate said, the time when your scores are going to be available to you is kind of based on when you perform, because some of them come out quicker than others. But usually what you'll see is that when your scores are available for pickup, somebody will put a big check mark. And so that's how you'll know. And then you'll be looking for the person who is identified as the head appraiser. And they're the person that you kind of have to catch their eye between performances. And they will sit down with you, and the rules say one team member to get the scores back. Some appraisers will actually say, do you want to bring the whole team? But be prepared for the idea that they may not let you do that. It may just be the team manager and one team member.
If they do let you bring all your team, just have one spokesperson, because it just makes it easier. But, again, when you hand back scores, it's actually a really positive experience. All right, then what's going to happen is there's going to be an award ceremony, and different regions do their award ceremonies in different ways. But the majority of them will have a dance party going on, or some games, until the score room gets ready. We generally know the timing of when the last team performs and when we can get the award ceremony started. And if they say the award ceremony is going to start at 4 or 5 or 6, be prepared for it to start at 4 or 5 or 6. As I said, DI is actually very good at sticking to our schedule. So the dance party may start at 5 and the awards start at 6. Just a reminder that the award ceremony, not everybody wins for second or third, but we should always be clapping for other teams, and remembering that we too have something to celebrate, whether we move on to the state competition or not. Generally after the award ceremony, this is completely up to you, but we always had an ice cream party at my house. But you know, again, it really just depends on where you live, where the team lives, how long your day's been, what time the award ceremony is. But make sure you do take time to celebrate and congratulate your kids.
So I agree. And try to encourage everyone to come, try to encourage everyone to stay and be respectful of all teams. And we're aware of the fact that it's been a really long day, and try to keep it moving and get through, but acknowledge everyone that deserves to be acknowledged. And ice cream is always a must.
Yep. And then at the end of the award ceremony, you're going to be able to pick up all of the raw scores and your placement. So unless you placed in the top 3, your name might not get called. But in your final packet, there will be a list of the 10 teams that performed, and you'll be able to see where you are. And that's where you're going to see sort of the raw and the scaled scores all together. So you generally get that after award ceremony. All right. Oh, if you, I didn't realize this was here. If you do qualify for the state tournament is heaps loads of fun. You have to register your team very quickly. We're going to give you a lot of paperwork to review. Review your scores. As I said, anything under that 50% is something to look at. Or if you didn't get all your objective scores, like you forgot to, you think your structure can hold more weight, or your payload didn't land exactly right. You can always improve between the regional and state tournament. And again, we're going to have lots of fun at state. There's lots of fun things to do. If you don't qualify for state and you live in the Denver metro area, we invite you to come along and again, support other teams and learn and come and watch. And there's a big expo, and there's lots of fun things to do at state, but the best thing to do at state is to look at the teams that qualified and then learn from them.
And one thing I would encourage you is, whether or not you get to move on to the state tournament or not, we always had a party. We always had, whatever our next scheduled meeting time was, we would all get together. We would celebrate everything that we had done that year. We'd have more ice cream, and the kids it was a great chance for the kids to kind of just go over and actually comb through their scores and look at what really got great points and where they could have improved, and just have fun together. So have fun, celebrate.
Yeah. We'd have a family party with ice cream and then other items that children couldn't partake in. But and it was just always fun because we want to celebrate. You guys have been on an amazing journey. I applaud you for coming this far. Tina and I have both been team managers for multiple teams, multiple age groups, and it really is. You guys make sure that you applaud yourself because you've done an amazing job, and I really, really want to thank you for being a team manager this year. If you have any questions, or please put them in the question and answer area. We can answer any kind of question about getting ready for a tournament or anything else that's on your mind. So please put them in the question and answer box. If you don't have any questions, then we wish you a really good night, but we'll hold on for a couple of minutes to see if anybody does.
And we wish you the best of luck at the tournament. Have an awesome time.
So Tina will be at the Jeffco tournament if you want to say hi to her. And I'll be at mostly faraway tournaments. I'll be in Durango and Pueblo and Junction.
Fun.
Yeah.
And, Kate did already encourage you to come to the state tournament, but as a team manager, I just can't think of anything better that you can do for your team for next year. Taking them to that state tournament, even if they don't get to compete, but giving them the opportunity to see other teams and what other teams have done, it can just really open their eyes and show them what's possible, because kids do amazing things, and there will be amazing things to see there.
We have a question about how to access this presentation. After I will upload it tomorrow onto our Destination Imagination Colorado YouTube channel. It will also be on the Team Manager Resources page of dicolorado.com, and you'll be able to see it then. If you want to listen to us again, you're more than welcome to. Any other questions? All right. Well, wish you good night and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.